We have a variety of news to discuss today, including some key injury updates on guys like Hyman and Price. We also have some prospect signings. We have some unfortunate news from the Ontario Hockey League. Of course, Patrick Marleau broke a major record last night, and Max Domi once again will be a healthy scratch for the Jackets. We'll discuss what's going on there coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today. Let's kick things off with the very sad and unfortunate news that the OHL announced earlier today that they are shutting down their season, which actually never really ever got started. Ontario Hockey League was one of the only places that never got to play any games this year. Junior hockey in Canada, for the most part, between the Western Hockey League and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, did get in, part of a season, if you will. The Memorial Cup was also canceled here in the last day or so. So some really unfortunate circumstances leading to these guys not being able to play. Of course, it falls under what's best and what's safest right now, and Ontario is in quite a bit of a mess when it comes to their situation dealing with all the COVID cases, and it's just really not a good scene, and it's unfortunate. Junior hockey was never able to really get going there this season. Of course, it impacts the draft. A lot of these players never get to display their skills and what they can bring, so obviously there's an impact that way to where they could be drafted. And I know for the top guys it may not have a major impact, but as I've heard other players say, like direct players who have played in the NHL, especially guys that were maybe a little bit of a late bloomer, or a guy who may have got drafted in the 5th or 6th round and had that draft season to really kind of break out and kind of get their name on the radar when they may not have been anywhere before, it's a real major step back into getting themselves noticed to get drafted and have a shot at their dream to play in the NHL. So I certainly feel for those players, and hopefully with everything going on, we can be back to normal hockey across everywhere by the coming fall when the next season is supposed to start. So fingers crossed we're through this pandemic and everything can resume normalcy in the not too distant future. Now, as I mentioned, we also have a variety of other news to look at here today. Max Domi is going to be a healthy scratch for Columbus yet again. I mean, Columbus played Florida yesterday. They played them on a back-to-back here again today. The Jackets even lost yesterday, and it's already been confirmed that he's not going into lineup today. You'd think they'd be, trying to make some changes to get, change things up to go for a victory here. And Domi could be one of those guys. He could be a spark at times, but it goes to show that he's dug himself into a pretty good doghouse here with head coach John Tortorella. I really do question his future in Columbus. Obviously, that trade between himself and Josh Anderson between Columbus and Montreal has looked pretty one-sided this year. Domi really hasn't been quite himself. I mean, obviously he had a good rookie season in Arizona when he started his career, kind of, fell off and his numbers dipped, got traded to Montreal, had a big spark, had a really good first season, signed a small extension, and then kind of tailed off there. Goes to Columbus, and he hasn't even really found that there either. Many wondered if he might get a chance to even either play center on a line with Patrick Laine. That could help his numbers. But it looks as though Columbus doesn't really see him as a center either, which I'm not really convinced he should be a full-time center. But either way, the guy's an NHL player trying to find his way here, and it's just a trade gone wrong for the Blue Jackets, and I really have to wonder what his future holds. Could he be on the move yet again? I know we talked about that in a video yesterday, just addressing some offseason rumors about some players who could be wearing different uniforms by the summertime. And Domi, certainly for me, is right near the top of that list. Makes a lot of sense that, of course, that very well could happen. So, of course, we did address the Patrick Marleau games played record yesterday that it was going to happen. Of course, now it's official. Patrick Marleau is now the official leader in all-time games played in the NHL, officially surpassing Gordie Howe with 1,768 games played. It's a remarkable feat over 23 years, how durable he's been, and one of the longest current Ironman streaks going here as well, which he does have a chance to break, depending on how long he continues to play. At this point, he has not indicated that he plans to retire at the end of the year. I know he recently did an interview with Pierre LeBrun, and when he was kind of made it known that it didn't sound like he was really, ready to hang him up. So could he continue to play in San Jose or elsewhere next year? I do think it's a real possibility as long as he can get a contract, of course. I think it's fair to say, though, that for the first time in his career that his numbers have dipped down enough that, he's starting to become a less effective hockey player. But that doesn't take anything away from the accomplishment here of the games played, the record he set, Obviously, he's doing it at a much younger age than Gordie Howe did. It'd be interesting to see if this record will ever be broken again, given the fact that for many, many years, most of us thought Gordie Howe's record would stand for so long that it might not be broken. But congratulations to Patrick Marleau. He's had one heck of a career. Obviously had a huge amount of congratulations from various NHL players and teammates he's played with over the years. And I guess now we just have to see if he'll continue to play long enough to have a shot at the all-time Ironman streak. We'll have to continue to see where things go for Marleau and what else he can accomplish before he hangs them up. Now, a few prospect signings here to talk about as well today. The Boston Bruins announced that they've signed right-shot defenseman Brady Lyle, who seems to be a pretty offensively gifted defenseman who played in the OHL for the past few years for Owen Sound. He was given an AHL contract earlier this year. He's played in, I think, about 18 or 19 games with Providence so far, and has actually looked pretty decent. His point totals are good as well, and he gets his full entry-level contract now. So he was an undrafted guy. So as I was talking about in the OHL cancellation news here, there's a lot of players that might have to become undrafted free agent signings to have their shot. Some players like him, could have obviously benefited from having an OHL season this year, but clearly he's a guy that, obviously will hopefully make it on his own. But another offensive defenseman to add to the Bruins system here, which could go a long way into getting him to the NHL. I mean, we know that blue line could use some more help back there. Hard to say how quickly they'll accelerate him. I think he'll be fair to say he'll spend some time in the AHL first, but looks like a pretty decent pickup here for Boston. Couple quick signings for the Rangers as well. They've extended Johnny Brzezinski for another one-year deal. It's a two-way contract. He gets $700K at the NHL, $200K at the American Hockey League. So, of course, he's been around the NHL, AHL up and down here for the past probably 5-6 seasons, but with the Rangers already. So he gets another one-year extension on that contract. The Rangers also signed a prospect here from the 2020 NHL Draft, 6th-round pick Will Kyle, who's a 6'3" left wing prospect, gets his ELC as well for the Rangers. And lastly here for the prospect signing news, the Buffalo Sabres have announced they've signed Lukas Rusek, who was a 6th-round pick in the 2019 NHL Draft. Rusek is a 22-year-old left winger hailing from the Czech Republic. Now, as I mentioned, we also have some other key injury updates here. Now, of course, with one player we know more than the other here, Zach Hyman has been confirmed to have an MCL sprain. It will be out a minimum of 2 weeks. So, based on what the hit was here with Alex Edler of the Vancouver Canucks the other night, who ultimately ended up getting suspended on the knee-on-knee collision, I think that's probably a best-case scenario based on what many people were thinking. A lot of people thought it could have been substantially worse than that, but obviously there's not a lot of time left in the regular season to be out a minimum of 2 weeks. If it goes into 3 or 4, he might be able to get a game or two in before the end of the regular season. It's hard to say, but if he's back closer to the 2 weeks, he'll have more opportunity. But we'll have to wait and see as we go and see how things are progressing. But certainly Zach Hyman is a major key player for the Leafs. Really balances things out in the top or middle six, depending on where he's placed in the lineup. Hardworking guy, can contribute offensively and really help create time and space for his line mates. So that was certainly not a good thing to happen there the other night. To be out a minimum of 2 weeks, like I said, is probably a best case scenario, but he should be good for the playoffs with that kind of news. So obviously we're still like a month away from playoffs pretty much, so that's somewhat good news, although you'd rather him not be hurt at all, of course, as a better case scenario. But we'll keep our eye on that situation and see what else we find out here as he continues to recover. And Carey Price ended up leaving last night's game between the Montreal Canadiens and the Edmonton Oilers. Now, we don't have confirmation on what exactly the injury was. The team hasn't really said much, at least as of the recording of this video. Maybe by the time it makes it to YouTube over the next little bit here as we go through the other part of the process, maybe there'll be some news, and if there is, I'll certainly update the pinned comment. But there's a lot of speculation that Carey Price might be concussed. Obviously, there was no real big, collisions or anything like that. The only play that people can look to and kind of say maybe that was it was the situation where Alex Chason was in front of the crease and did make slight contact with him, which ultimately was a goal to get overturned here. But that's the only scenario that people can kind of point to and say, maybe that's what it is. Because if you do see, he does have contact with Price's head. Now, it doesn't seem to be, a real hard blow or anything, but when it comes to, head injuries and concussions, sometimes it doesn't take a lot. And the other thing, too, is when you're looking from the camera view, sometimes it's not as much as it appears. Sometimes these collisions are harder than, you might think from what you can tell watching on TV or through the camera. So ultimately, that would be a big blow for the Montreal Canadiens, who are already struggling. They're barely playing .500 hockey under new coach Dominic Ducharme. They really haven't improved much since Claude Julien was dismissed earlier this season. The team seems to be really struggling, playing uninspired, and I do think a big part of that, in my opinion, is the loss of Brendan Gallagher. Brendan Gallagher is a real big part of the engine that gets the Montreal Canadiens going, and not having him there has been a major blow. I mean, the Habs, for the most part, I think are relatively secure to still hang on and make the playoffs. The Calgary Flames are trying to chase them down, but we saw the Flames lose to the Senators last night for the 6th time in 8 games this year. So the Flames blew an opportunity to make up some ground, and they would still have a big mountain to climb anyways. They still, I think it's 6 or 8 points behind, and the Habs have games in hand too. Now there is a 3-game series between the Habs and Flames coming up in the very near future, which could certainly dictate how things could swing. If Calgary were able to sweep that and take all the points off the board, that would certainly make things a lot more interesting coming down the stretch, but they would still have a little bit more than that to overcome. So having games in hand is one thing, but you have to win those games in hand for them to mean anything and be important and to really solidify your position. So, I mean, thankfully the Habs can say they've had great goaltending from Jake Allen this year. You could even make an argument that he's been better than Carey Price. I mean, statistically speaking, he's given him a chance to win each and every game. He hasn't really had, a bad situation all year. He's been pretty solid for them. And really, like I said, you can't really say that when Price has been playing that he's given them a better chance to win. So they're in good hands. The only thing is you don't want to have Jake to play too much. So if he ends up being out for an extended period of time, it could be a big blow just from the ability to be able to rotate. And obviously you want Carey Price mentally sharp for the playoffs. So if he's, missing an extended time, then that could certainly impact things. So, of course, we don't know it's concussion. That's just a speculation out there. Once we get confirmation from the team, if they say anything, then we'll update the pinned comment, so check that. Like I said, they may not even confirm that. They very well could say upper body injury. Like, they may be vague about it. They don't have to release those kind of details. So we'll just have to see what we find out. But that's a situation that could be bad for a team that's already struggling heading into the playoffs. So we'll have to watch that closely to see how things go. So let me know your thoughts on today's news down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news from around the entire NHL. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.